It was when Max started primary school that we first knew there was something seriously wrong. At our first meeting with his teacher, she reeled off a list of problems. He was running around constantly, barging in on other children's games, starting fights, and ignoring all attempts at discipline. I was horrified. I knew Max could be difficult, but I had no idea it was this bad. Things just got worse from there. It was exhausting and incredibly frustrating. What made things even harder was the reaction from other parents. They blamed all the problems on us. A friend suggested I get Max checked out for ADHD. Getting a diagnosis wasn't easy. We had to wait over 6 months to see a specialist. But eventually we were successful. I can't tell you what a relief it was to finally understand what was wrong with Max. For so long, I'd been sure it was all my fault. Once the diagnosis was made, I felt that I could see a way forward. The specialist recommended we put Max on medication, but I was really resistant. He was still so young, it just didn't feel right to me. So we tried everything else: therapy, special diets, parenting lessons, even homeopathy. Nothing really worked. Max was a little easier to deal with at home, but things at school got worse and he fell further and further behind. It was really heartbreaking to see his reaction. You could tell he knew something was wrong and was doing his very best to put it right. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do it. In the end, after a long time, we agreed to give the medication a trial run. We noticed positive changes within a day or two. Max was quieter, less hyper, and able to concentrate for more than a few minutes at a time. The transformation at school was even more remarkable. I remember picking him up outside the school gates just after he started on medication. He had a huge smile on his face, and when I asked why, he told me it was because he hadn't got into any trouble that day. For 2 years or so, we thought Max's ADHD was under control, but then he started secondary school. It wasn't long before I was getting reports from his teachers that he was daydreaming in class, failing to get his work done on time, and getting into arguments and fights with other classmates. It wasn't much better at home. Getting him to do his homework was a nightly battle. He's never been a good sleeper, but now he would stay up until the early hours playing video games and would often wake up during the night. In the morning, it was impossible to get him out of bed. And he was so forgetful, too. He'd forget everything: his books, his PE kit, even his tie. What really worried me was what all this was doing to Max. A few months before, he'd been a bright, happy, and loving boy. Now he'd withdrawn into himself. He seemed angry and unhappy all the time and had no friends. He always seemed to be stuck at home on his own with his computer and video games. He'd put on a brave face, but I could tell he was desperately unhappy. We went to see the specialist again. He thought a change in medication might help and suggested Max switch to a longer-acting medication that would give him greater control throughout the day. It took a little while for Max to adjust to this new medication, but once he did, things began to turn around. His teachers reported that he was better behaved in class and starting to catch up with his work. At home, he was more relaxed and easier to be around. He even started to get to bed at a reasonable time. Best of all, I could see that Max was finally starting to feel better about himself. Don't get me wrong, things aren't perfect. We still have rows from time to time, and he's finding it difficult to make new friends. But I know he's happier, and I'm confident that we're finally on the right track.